The 2027 NFL draft class is shaping up to be one of the best in years, starting with a loaded group of quarterbacks. So, what better way to kick off our offseason preview of the 2027 draft class than by looking at this loaded class of quarterbacks in today's episode of Best Available? Thank you for watching today's episode. Make sure that you are subscribed on YouTube, especially if you want to keep seeing this weekly series roll out. We are going to do weekly positional previews along with a highlighting film study of a specific player every week. So I hope you tune in for those. Thank you to all of our members who continue to support the channel. If you would like full access to the big board so that you can see all of these grades happening in real time, beyond just the top players that we're talking about in these videos, consider becoming a member. I'll leave details to that in the episode description. Along with all of our draft preview content, we're also going to dive into some fundamental concepts of football to try and teach some people about the game. So if you have some friends or some loved ones that are trying to get into football, they're trying to learn a little bit more about the game, direct them to this channel. We'll have those going starting in June. With a few fun projects that we're going to work on, starting with all the different types of run concepts in football so that people can get a better sense of just what all goes into a running game for an NFL offense. I'm going to give you my top 10 quarterbacks in this draft class, but there's so many guys that we're not going to talk about that I have to at least mention some of them at the start. Brennan Sorsby is going to be one that you probably hear a lot about in the coming weeks because he might enter the NFL supplemental draft. We're not going to talk about him in this video, but I did do a full film breakdown of him last week if you want to go ahead and check that out on the channel. Just Brennan Sorsby, very intriguing physical toolsy player. Had a lot of fun watching him, so be sure to check that out. We could talk about a number of other guys. Darian Mensah is not mentioned in this video, transferring to Miami. He has a chance to take a huge leap. Same with Josh Hoover, who's transferring from TCU to Indiana. Have not gotten around to him yet. Frankly, I haven't gotten around to any of the IU transfers yet. Might do a whole video about all of those guys because they got a lot of talent coming in. I'm pretty excited about that. Some other guys I have circled and have watched in passing include Jaden Maiava out of USC, Drake Lindsay out of Minnesota. I'm starting to hear a lot of people start to like quite a bit, so maybe that's the guy that we break down this week since we don't talk about him in today's video. Stay tuned on that. But there's even like the Marcel Reeds of the world. There's a million names I could name. There's a lot of guys that have a chance to take a very big step forward in 2027. So just because I don't talk about them on this top 10 list doesn't mean they won't be in the top 10 or maybe even the top 5. We see this every year, guys. Like, just some people come out of nowhere, their draft stock skyrockets. Some of these guys that we're really high on might end up completely falling out of, favor. I keep thinking of Drew Aller, who showed a lot of promise at the end of last season for Penn State. This past season, things go pretty horrible. So this is why I love the preview. We just at least get a baseline of guys that we're going to talk about, build out the big board early, and then start adjusting it as the new information comes in. So stay tuned for all these positions, but let's dive into the top 10. And we're going to start with John Mateer out of Oklahoma at the 10 spot. I've flipped him between 9 and 10 a few times, but I think I'm cool with sitting him at 10. When I look at the frame, I'm kind of reminded that he is a bit of a smaller quarterback at 6'1" and 224 pounds. But there is a lot I like about him. It does feel like he is a true dual threat quarterback, with legit arm talent. The ball can fly out of his hands. He's a legit runner, both, with power and elusiveness. I kind of like that you can, operate in a few different ways, not just on scrambles as a runner, but you can use him as a design runner between the tackles on read option concepts. So there is a lot of plus value on him as a runner. And as a passer, I do like a bit of what he has between the ears mentally, especially against the blitz. He feels like a guy that can get that ball out pretty quick. You can see him hurry up his internal clock, understand where the hot routes are. I love all of that. The arm angles and stuff can be cool. It kind of bothers me at times. Sometimes we just need to simplify some of this stuff. Not every throw has to look, fancy. You don't have to be Matthew Stafford on every play. I do really appreciate his toughness because he really wants to, make tight window throws, push the ball vertically, not settle for checkdowns, especially when they need a big throw. That can get him into some trouble sometimes. On top of just, some of the pocket presence stuff, he is mobile, he can scramble, but it feels like a lot of times he's, drifting far too back. He's rolling backwards. He's trying to, throw off his back foot under duress. And he can be really over-reliant on that arm talent, just assuming that he can get himself out of trouble way too much without having to worry about everything else mechanically, leading to some accuracy issues. Even on open throws where he's like, I've got an open receiver deep, feels like he can almost overthrow them. He gets so excited, he kind of puts too much juice on it. A lot of these concerns can be, eased with more playing experience. And I am hopeful that's the case for Mateer. A really interesting year. I do enjoy his game. It's kind of a fun, refreshing kind of old school dual threat quarterback in some ways. But there's just some stuff I want to clean up a little bit if I'm going to take him more seriously as an NFL draft prospect, especially at just 6'1". We need to see a bit more from a true just pocket passer presence. But I am intrigued, and I think this will be a big year for him to see, what he can do in 2026. The other guy kept flipping back and forth with Mateer at 10, comes in at number 9, and it's Sam Leavitt, formerly at Arizona State, now with the LSU Tigers and Lane Kiffin. Playing with Kiffin could boost his draft stock quite a bit. We've seen that with Jackson Dart in the past, even Trinidad Chambliss, who we will talk about a bit in this video. So, I am hopeful that gives him a bump. He is a really intriguing quarterback, 6'2", 205. Only modest production last year, and part of that has to do with, the injury availability of Jordan Tyson. But when you watch the film, like, you see the physical tools, man. Like, he's got enough arm talent. He's got enough athleticism. He's got a good enough arm to push the field vertically, and from a clean pocket, what I appreciate is he does seem pretty comfortable, going through his reads with correct timing. And I do feel encouraged by that. But there are some accuracy issues, especially on like the short intermediate stuff. He's got some funky mechanics that we need to clean up. If you want to be an NFL quarterback, sometimes you just got to make the boring stuff look easy. I don't feel that way yet with Leavitt. For as much of the flashy plays as we get, and boy, are there a lot of flashy plays on Leavitt's tape, especially navigating pocket, navigating pressure, making plays out of nothing. I really appreciate all that, but we got to be more consistent with the boring stuff for me to be sold on him as a QB prospect. And we've really, really got to work on throwing with anticipation, especially on quick game routes, hitches, stick concepts. He can throw way too late, especially when he's scanning through his reads, then reacting, then trying to throw. It can really lead to some dangerous passes that can get jumped, even for possible pick sixes. We've got to work on throwing with better anticipation as well. I like all the tools. I like the situation he's going to be in with LSU, almost said Ole Miss. But with Lane Kiffin, I think that pairing could, really help him out. So he's another guy like, he has all the resources in front of him to take a big leap forward this year. So I am curious what we see from Leavitt this season. This might be my hottest take of this list, so don't freak out, but I'm going to try to explain it, because I turned on the CJ Bailey tape out of NC State, this 6'6", 210-pound quarterback, and I was pretty blown away by the arm talent, and normally, I try to discount arm talent as much as possible. It's not everything when it comes to a quarterback, but with his frame and decent enough athletic ability and the way he throws a football, man, this dude is just a rocket-powered vertical passing threat. I've mentioned it before with QB prospects, but I really wish that Bruce Arians was still around, because Bailey and Arians feel like a match made in heaven. I mean, the arm strength obviously shows up, and he can hit guys in stride when pushing the ball vertically, but that arm talent also allows him to fit in some tight windows on intermediate throws, middle of the field. He's not afraid to throw in the middle of the field, which I really like from younger quarterback prospects. It's an area of the field in the NFL that you need to be able to hit with accuracy, and I am encouraged by that. Ball just explodes out of his hands, man, and it's really exciting to see. Plus that rushing ability, it's solid athleticism. With his size, he's surprisingly quick. Maybe just like a less athletic Taylon Green, who was also this really big body out of Arkansas this past season. Not quite built like him, but he's really tall, really lanky, really, really, really strong arm. I'd like to see the pocket presence improve a bit. He just needs to get better at feeling to navigate the pocket while keeping his eyes downfield as a quarterback, instead of just trying to escape, contain, and rolling out one way or the other. Some more nuance there will help him out a lot. And obviously, we got to work a lot on the lower body mechanics, especially. He is so over-reliant on having a gigantic arm. He's not always stepping into throws. He's side-arming stuff. We need to get better at that and reading second-level defenders. But the biggest question mark to me, and this is why he's not any higher on this list, and frankly, why I don't expect many people to have him as a top 10 quarterback, the prospect this offseason, we've really got to improve the accuracy under duress and some of the mental toughness stuff when things don't go well. And the games I watched either had really good games, or a mistake or two happened early and it felt like it spiraled. And, there could be other reasons for that, but that is a big red flag to me with QB evaluations. Things aren't always going to go well. How do you respond to adversity? just some of the games I watched, it kept getting worse and worse and worse as things went wrong. We really need to work on that. We need to work on the accuracy and ball placement against pressure. The pocket presence stuff I would also like tweaked, but that feels like a more advanced, nuanced conversation with the rest of the stuff we need to work on. If he can prioritize improving, the accuracy and the mental toughness, he could declare and be a really interesting quarterback prospect. I believe he would be declaring early. I think it might be better suited off to, wait another year if possible before declaring, but he's just 20 years old, man, and the talent itself is really, really exciting. I'm very hopeful for him. I don't know what the NC State season or offense is going to look like this year after a couple of guys go pro, but I've got him circled because sometimes I just fall in love with an arm, and I know I'm not supposed to, but I think there's a lot of tools that we can work with, and with refinement on such a young QB prospect, this guy might be really, really fun. Drew Mestemaker comes in at number 7. The former North Texas quarterback now goes to Oklahoma State. First year as a starter at just 19 years old last season for North Texas. And what's even more impressive is that is after being a full-time backup in high school. So you're talking a guy with very, very, very little playing experience in his football career. Goes to North Texas, has a pretty decent season. And I'm excited to see what he can do at Oklahoma State. And because there were some traits for a 6'3", 211-pound quarterback that I liked, whether it is, good deep ball accuracy, even when getting drilled in the pocket. He has a good arm. For a guy that has not played a lot, pretty comfortable throwing on the middle of the field. Not only can he hit with accuracy into throwing windows, but he has that feel of when to throw with touch and layer balls over linebackers and second-level defenders that you really don't see from guys that have not played a lot of on-field, in-game football. He's a bit goofy and clunky as an athlete and as a scrambler, but he is a little more quick than you'd expect. So it's kind of a silly body kind of running style, but he's got enough elusiveness in the pocket to escape some guys. The biggest things for me is he's just got to clean up his footwork. This is a guy that is very, very hoppy in the pocket. Don't blame him. If this was my first level of playing football as a starter, I'd be a little jumpy in the pocket too. But he's got to settle down those feet. It really can lead to some errant throws, erratic placement, because he's just so hoppy in the pocket and messes with consistently throwing from the same platform every time. Again, as an NFL quarterback, sometimes you just got to make routine stuff look boring and the same and uniform. But he struggles with that because he's bouncing around so much in the pocket, not dropping straight back, taking some of these angled drops. So some of that we need to work on, but I can't blame him for any of this for how little he's played football at the high school and college level. Oklahoma State is not where I would have expected him to transfer to, so I am very curious to see how that ends up. But this is another guy, like, if he doesn't want to declare after this season, I totally get it. I just hope he starts trending in the right direction because there's a lot I did like about him that I am curious about, but I do think he's going to need some work and some more playing experience before he's ready to face, the Myles Garretts of the NFL. Number 6 for me is Trinidad Chambliss out of Ole Miss, and that might be higher than some people have him. I don't care. You go back and watch that Georgia game in the college football playoff, and I saw a guy that really wasn't, boosted by an offense, but really just balled out. Like, typically these Ole Miss or Lane Kiffin offenses are very QB friendly, try to make things as easy as possible on you. But that felt like a game where he just put the team on his back. His wide receivers obviously played very well as well, but against a really loaded defense with a ton of NFL talent, I thought he really showed out. He is very small, and that does lead to some issues. Normally, I'm a little more, not worried about height. He's 6 foot, 200 pounds, but he did have 15 passes batted down at the line of scrimmage in 2025. So that is something I'm keeping an eye on going forward. But there is so much I like about him. He's got a really quick release, a bigger arm than you'd expect from a 6-foot quarterback. He's got a really good internal clock and quick tempo in the passing game where he's very intentional about getting his hips flipped, getting his shoulders pointed and his feet so he can throw with, that quick release with accuracy, with urgency in the quick game, which makes a lot of those RPO quick game stuff really effective. Not only does he have that accuracy, getting his feet set, he's got deep ball accuracy, he can throw with touch. He's very comfortable throwing up the seam, layering that ball over second level defenders, throwing at people who are covered when the defender is turned to him. So there's a lot of arm talent and quick throwing motion stuff that he can make a lot of plays in the quick intermediate game, set up the deep ball and throw that accurately. So he can throw all 3 levels of the field with accuracy. I really like a lot of that. He's not a great mobile threat, but from pocket awareness standpoint, he can really navigate the pocket, keep his eyes downfield, evade pressure when it's coming, take off when he needs. And I wouldn't want to use my smaller quarterback on a lot of design runs, but I do appreciate he can extend plays with his legs. And while he is accurate on a deep ball, he's not going to fit a lot of really tight window throws. His arm's good, not great, maybe solid. But there's so much I like about him, and if your biggest knocks on him, or he didn't play in NFL offense and he's a little smaller, like, listen, there have been a lot of quarterbacks that have had success that aren't the biggest guys and had that same situation. And what I love about him above all else is that mental toughness and composure. And some of the biggest moments for an Ole Miss program that had so much going on for it negatively with the Kiffin drama, he just continued to stay composed and just ball out, especially on the biggest stages. And if he can continue doing that for Ole Miss, man, like, this is a legit quarterback prospect. You could say another red flag is that he decided not to declare with all the eligibility concerns. This is a former D2 Ferris State quarterback that transfers to Ole Miss, isn't even expected to start, starts, has the opportunity to probably be QB2 in last year's or this year's draft class. Instead goes back. Scouts are going to have some questions about that. But overall, man, like, I came away really impressed with his tape. And I feel like he has a chance, if he continues to play at this level, to be one of the top quarterbacks in this class, even though he doesn't have the physical tools of some of the guys that we're about to talk about. And that includes the number 5 guy on this list, who is LaNorris Sellers out of South Carolina. 6'3", 240, just tank of a quarterback. If you fell in love with Anthony Richardson, and I'm sorry, I'm guilty of that one, unfortunately, you're gonna like Sellers, because the physical tools are probably going to get him into the first round, regardless of how this season goes. Just teams are going to value his physical skill set, which is really thick quarterback with probably the best arm in this quarterback class, and that is saying a lot. There's some damn good arms in this quarterback class. He's got the off-script playmaking ability. He's legitimately mobile and quick and fast, so he can make defenders miss. He can run around them. He can even run through them with his dense frame. It's just such a unique blend of skills that is so exciting for a QB coach to be like, I can work with this. I can make this work at the NFL level. I think the thing with him is just the offensive line and just offense around Sellers was so bad last year. I know South Carolina made an effort to bolster that offensive line this offseason, so hopefully he can have a little bit more time back there, because there's a lot of NFL throws that we need to see from Sellers before I'm fully convinced on him. Like, yeah, he can throw with touch and hit those cover 2 hole shots from time to time, but he doesn't always know where the safeties are, and sometimes he can try and throw with touch and just get a ball jumped by his safety. I don't love that. There are times where I feel like he just makes reckless passes when under duress and tries to force throws that aren't there, and that gets him in trouble. And I appreciate that he can go through a couple of reads, set his feet, and throw accurately at times, but I need to see way more NFL full field reads, even half field, where he's going through his progressions with good tempo, urgency, anticipation, understanding throwing windows. I understand that it's hard for this to not happen, or it's hard for this to happen when your offensive line is just constantly getting gashed and you're constantly throwing under duress. So we've seen all the physical tools from him this year. I just want to see some NFL stuff, man. Like, if we can work on some of these NFL caliber throws and be more consistent with our accuracy and not have to run for our lives the whole season, this could be a huge year for LaNorris Sellers. I still think no matter what happens, someone's going to take a chance on his skill set, but I think for the vast majority of NFL teams that don't want just the physical tools, we're going to need to see a bit more from Sellers. And I'm optimistic, but we got to watch it first. I'll be honest, I wasn't expecting to like Julian Sayin. He comes in at number 4 for me. Ohio State quarterback. When I see a 6'1", 208-pound quarterback, I'm like, he's a little slight. He has so much talent. I don't think any quarterback has more talent around them to work with than Julian Sayin. So I'm like, he's probably just the product of, a top tier offense with elite weapons. And that's just kind of his whole story. But man, I'll give him credit. Probably mechanically the smoothest, cleanest passer in this quarterback class. He's one of these guys that's really intentional with getting his shoulders and, feet pointed and deadly accurate. And I'll give him mad credit for that. Even when it's under duress at times, like, he can throw a really accurate, clean ball with solid zip. And that's going to matter, especially for a lot of these point and shoot NFL teams, the Shanahan system, the guys that just want their quarterbacks to be more like point guards that can just consistently keep you ahead of the sticks, ahead of the chains, successful play after successful play, even if that's, 5 yards on first down. That's the kind of quarterback you're getting with Julian Sayin. He's not like an elite off-script playmaker or anything, but man, if you just need someone that's a consistent adult in the room with accuracy, clean mechanics, this is your guy. Mobility is not his calling card, but I do appreciate that he has some pocket awareness. He's keeping his eyes downfield. He can navigate that that pocket when it gets muddy. From a clean pocket, he can go through his reads and still focus on keeping those shoulders and feet pointed. So he's not just relying truly on arm talent, because I think his arm is adequate, solid at best. If we're working on nitpicks here, I mean, I'd like to see him feel more confident throwing over the middle of the field. We've talked about that with a few of these guys that are lower on these rankings, but more comfortable throwing middle of the field. I think when he's going through his progressions, because he's so used to his number 1 or number 2 reads being guys like Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate, that doesn't have to go through his progressions too often. But when he does, it feels like he's drastically late getting that throw out. Clean that up a bit, and then the decision making that I would like to see improved a little bit more. Times he's throwing across his body or not throwing the ball away and taking a sack instead, which that drives a coach nuts. Some of that decision making can improve, but all of these things feel relatively fixable. So I'm not too worried. The size is going to be a question mark for sure, but if you just want an accurate quarterback that's going to get the ball out, I have to admit it, man, Sayin really impressed me. I ended up liking him way more than I was expecting. Thought he was going to be a lot lower on this list. I thought I was going to be a hater, but I can't doubt the accuracy, man. Here's a guy I was not expecting at all. He was not even on my radar as a QB prospect, and I watched a lot of Notre Dame football. But at number 3, I turned on the film of CJ Carr, and I was floored at how far ahead he was as a quarterback prospect. 6'2", 210, but he is a talented individual with his arm. This is one of those guys that is a really effective playmaker in the intermediate part of the field. He's got that good touch to layer over second-level defenders, hit tight windows in the middle of the field. That arm strength is better than you'd expect for a smaller quarterback, because he can push the ball vertically. Not only that, he can deliver it with velocity or touch. He knows when to do what. So if it's like, a tight end up the seam, he's going to put a little touch on that throw if they're outrunning a defender to get it over that helmet into the breadbasket of the tight end. Or if he's just got a wide receiver on the outside that's winning with speed, he's going to rip that thing and hit them in stride. I was not expecting that from this guy, honestly. My perception of Notre Dame, despite how much I watched them, was just like, hey, he's got a talented backfield. Don't know much about this passing game. I turned on the film, man. Like, it's not just the arm talent. He's got quickness. He can quickly, get into his throwing platform, when he's moving around the pocket, then get his feet set and rip that ball. From a clean pocket, he stays poised. He's, going through the process and going through his reads, and then delivering accurately again, getting those feet set on those outbreaking routes, especially on those third downs where you need that first down. He can throw with the anticipation needed, get those guys in stride. He's got a little pocket awareness and mobility to him. I would say it's a bit better than Sayin. I wouldn't call mobility Sayin's calling card. Carr's a bit more talented as a runner and scrambler. I think that helps him out a bit. It's not elite by any sense of the word, but it's enough for me, especially for an NFL quarterback where sometimes you do need to extend plays with your legs. As far as his throwing motion, I'm not an expert on throwing motions, but when I watch, sometimes it stands out to me, and his feels like it can be a bit elongated at times, which can mess with some timing and accuracy. So I'm not sure his throwing motion is always the most consistent. And he struggles a little bit with placement on those quick RPO throws when you have to, you're faking that handoff. You have to quickly flip your hips and get that ball out. Sometimes he can struggle and those balls can be a little bit erratic. The good news is that's not often an NFL play, but there might be some of that depending on the offense he goes to. And it feels like a lot of his turnovers just come from screw it plays where he's just like, I'm just ripping this ball. I don't care. He's got a lot of gunslinger to him. And I'll admit, I actually kind of like that in quarterbacks who are talented. There's some plays on Carr's tape where he's going with the no look throws. I think he's inspired a bit by guys like Matthew Stafford in that regard, but we got to cut down on those turnovers, man, especially in an NFL offense. They're just such killers to the outcome of a game. Got to win the turnover battle. I love that he has that mentality that he wants to, put the game on his shoulders and make some tough throws, but we just got to understand when and where, and there's a time and place for that. And if he can do that and, take care of his body and as a runner, slide. Just learn how to slide, please. Please learn how to slide. He's not athletic enough to just try and throw his shoulder into stuff, but there's a lot to really like here, man. I came away really, really impressed. I think we're just scratching the surface of what he can be, and I think with some legit weapons around him, I know they're losing, their top two running backs, but with some legit receivers, and I'm sure they'll produce another NFL tight end this year. I'm very, very optimistic of what we'll see from Carr in 2026. Two guys left on this list, and honestly, I thought Dante Moore was going to be my number one quarterback, but he comes in at number two. I had written down earlier in the season that I thought mental toughness was one of Moore's best traits. Like, there were some games where he made, a mistake, or the offense had, a bump in the road. And I always thought he handled that really, really well. And then the Indiana game happened, and he threw the pick six and bounced back okay after that. And then just in the second half, I felt things late first half, early second, just things crumbled. And that had me questioning everything. But go back and watch the tape, settle down a little bit, and stopped panicking as much about that. Still think this is a very good quarterback, and he is just a really, really accurate guy. He's got a really quick throwing motion. He's deadly accurate, whether he's inside the pocket or rolling out. He's got a legit arm, so he can fit into some tight windows, and he seems to know what his plan of attack is going to be typically pre-snap, which helps him out a lot. He's like, identify this blitzer, how the alignment of this team for running some hard count stuff, and see how the safeties are rotating. Stuff like that allows him to be pinpoint accurate, make the right decisions more often than not. It really helps him out quite a bit. I think all of those skills really help him in that quick passing game when it's a 0-1 step drop. He's so intentional with his mechanics and that throwing release that he just gets that ball out rapid quick. And we keep talking about that in the video. If you can do the routine stuff easily and get guys in stride and throw accurately, it really just helps the offense, stay healthy, stay viable, and keep defenses guessing. The big questions are just from what happened at the end of the season. Like, why did things go so poorly so quickly in that game against Indiana? The mental toughness thing I talked about at the beginning of this section, talking about more, like, what happened to that? He needs to improve his decision making. Maybe sometimes he feels rushed and not focusing on his footwork when under duress, but I still feel like he can be pretty accurate. But the biggest thing to help the Oregon offense, especially because they can be so lethally efficient, they always have talent around them. They can always get out of bad situations, but he needs to cut down on some of the negative plays. And I'm not talking about just turnovers. I'm talking about sacks, especially. Like, this is a guy that, is mobile enough. He's, smart enough with checkdowns, and, athletic enough to escape the pocket. But sometimes he really just wants to make that big play and ends up taking a sack instead. We just got to figure out when to quit on plays and throw the ball away. We don't want to get behind the sticks. With how efficient this offense is, you can live with incompletions. It's when you start taking sacks or throwing interceptions is where things can really get out of hand for Oregon. This is a really big year for Moore. He could have been QB2 automatically just by declaring last year. Can he fit into that QB1 spot with a big year this year? I'm bullish on him, man. I thought early season Dante Moore was legit potentially QB1 in last year's draft class. So let's see what he can do this year. I'm still staying optimistic. I think he's going to have plenty of talent around him. I think if he can brush off how last season ended and stick with just being a lethally accurate guy with a good arm that can, hit guys in stride in all three phases, short, intermediate, deep balls, I think Oregon's going to be more than okay. They just have too much talent around him for him not to have a great year and potentially compete for that QB1 spot. The Texas game against Ohio State was so ingrained in my mind for so long that I kind of just discounted Arch Manning, knew he was coming back to school. Then I turned on the tape from the end of the year, man, and I was wrong. Arch Manning is QB1. He turned things around so quickly, and that's not to say that there's not a lot I still really need to see him improve on. But the talent is just so obviously there for this 6'4", 220-pound, really legit dual threat athlete. We've talked a lot about, deep ball accuracy, and a lot of these guys have that in their wheelhouse here. But what I like with Arch's deep ball accuracy is this is a guy that doesn't need his wide receivers to change speeds to get underneath the football. He's just very comfortable feeling that, what stride, top end speed his receivers have, and get them in perfect stride to hit them on those deep throws, basket catches, and just take off already at full speed, to actually make huge plays. On top of that, because of his athletic ability, man, he can get out of a lot of tough situations, not just as a runner, but evading pressure in the pocket. It's really, really impressive quality I really appreciate about him. I think it's why Ohio State had so much success early on, is they had some, freak athletes as spies on Arch that other teams just simply did not have. and it helped Arch not only just avoid pressure around the outsides or interior pressure, but also just keep his eyes downfield and make plays. I really like a lot of that. He's competitive as hell. He'll take shots for his team to get a ball out. That's something I don't think we talked enough in the Ohio State game because he was taking some shots. But throughout the season, when he's getting clobbered and throwing the ball, offensive line didn't do him many favors, but also his receivers, man, dropped a lot of passes last year. Those two things made it really frustrating at times to watch Arch Manning tape because the talent's clearly there. I'm very encouraged because, Gooseby might be the top, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, might be the top tackle in this draft class. They bring in Coleman out of Auburn, who's going to be a really exciting deep threat in this offense that are going to really fix some of those things. But the arm strength and velocity from Arch to rip balls, middle of the field, intermediate, deep throws, out routes. He has the arm talent to make all of those throws. And I always hate saying, oh, he can make all the throws, but the arm talent with placement from Arch is some stuff I really like that he can actually make these throws accurately in stride. I really like to see that stuff. He's a much stronger player than you expect for a quote unquote sub 220. I think he's about 220 or bigger, but he can shed off sack attempts. He can get throws out while being dragged to the ground. He can lower his shoulder as a runner. And when you add that strength with his athletic ability as a runner, becomes a dangerous guy you can use. During the Quinn Ewers era, he was used as a package to run the football, which I really appreciate. And when you're talking about all of this, man, it's hard not to be really excited with a guy with a legit arm, legit deep ball, can make all the throws, is a legit plus athlete. This is why he's QB1. He's played very little as a starting quarterback, but he got so much better as the year went on. That gets me really, really excited about him and his talent. It's rare to have all of those things and some polish to his game hit the middle of the field. And do all that with the mechanics still being a bit of a work in process. I thought the mechanics got way, way better as the season went on. So I want to make sure we give him credit for that. But sometimes it feels like his throwing motion almost looks labored, like he's really putting all into his throw. Don't love seeing that. And when the mechanics are sloppy, man, they are really sloppy. And again, that happened way, way less as the season went on. But there are times where the feet are a mess, the shoulders are a mess. He's playing like it's backyard football, and it gets him in trouble. And I don't love that. If we're talking about a big thing that he needs to work on, it's mental toughness. I've talked about that with a few of these guys, but it felt like against tougher competition or in pressure situations in games, it looked like he felt really flustered and really rushed, and it impacted his accuracy. And so that's not just playing against top 10 opponents. It's also close games, late games. That's some stuff we need to work on, but I feel like all of these issues just come down to playing time. This is a guy that has not played a lot, played against weaker competition in high school. It was a big step up to play in the SEC, and I appreciate how methodical and patient they've been rolling out this process, not rushing Arch into any situation too quickly, including declaring for the NFL draft too early. So I'm hopeful for all of this stuff that we can work with everything else with Arch, and as he continues to get more polished and improve on some of these things that are absolutely fixable, the talent is going to keep showing out. Because if you go back and watch the end of the year again, we did another video on Arch earlier this offseason. I encourage you to check it out. I'm high on him. He's QB1. It's just that talent. We're really the discourse has gotten so messy around him. I think we're just not watching the player. And if you just ignore the Manning name and just watch the football player, you can see why people are excited about him. And with legit weapons next year, man, this might be a really fun season for Arch Manning. We finally might get that year that, Texas fans have been hoping for. And that's our early QB rankings. I hope you enjoyed this video. We'll be doing weekly episodes on positions. So going forward, starting next week with running backs, really fun running back class after last year just being a one running back class. So stay tuned on that. If you're excited for more of these videos, please subscribe. And again, let your friends know that are trying to get into football about our classrooms that start next week. Thank you so much for watching, guys. We'll be back with Packers rookie preview tomorrow or Wednesday if you're watching this on Tuesday. And then on Friday, we'll talk about one of these quarterbacks. It might be the Minnesota kid that we didn't get into too much. There's a couple names I'm thinking about, so stay tuned for that. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Take care.